Let's talk about the phrase third world. This phrase has been everywhere, everywhere for a long time. News anchors will use it. By the way, if that's happening, then you're clearly watching the kind of media you've got to stop watching, the kind of news you've got to stop tuning into. But development economists still use it. Some well meaning NGO may still use it. People will drop it into conversation as a descriptor, which is basically shorthand for poverty, disorder, and underdevelopment. But this particular phrase, third world, it's one of the most arrogant constructions in modern political vocabulary. So let's start with what it actually means. Welcome back. I'm Serena Sayed, and this is the place where I provide commentary on political politics, current affairs, media-ish, AI-ish, and sometimes I'll go off topic because that's just how my brain works. And I bring, with my 25 years in comms and media, a systems thinking lens as I approach the finish line of my MSc in systems thinking. I'm working on my dissertation right now. So let's start with the term essentially being coined, well, not essentially, it was coined in 1952 by French demographer Alfred Sauvy. He was drawing an explicit parallel to the third estate in revolutionary France, the commoners, as distinct from the clergy and the nobility. Now, Alfred's framing positioned these countries in a subordinate class, in a global hierarchy. First world would be the Western capitalist bloc, second world, the Soviet bloc, third world, everyone else, the leftovers, the remainder. And that framing, unfortunately, it's never completely gone. It's still hanging around like a bad smell. So even now that the Cold War architecture, I suppose, that produced the term is gone, even now that second world has effectively disappeared from common usage, third world persists. And it hasn't survived because it's so accurate. It has survived because it is useful to those who benefit from this hierarchy that it describes and that it continually references. Here's where it gets interesting. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. So, the countries most consistently label third world are ready for it: Sub Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean, parts of the Middle East. They're all sitting on extraordinary concentrations of the world's most valuable resources. And this is why I wanted to do this video. We all know this. We've already had this conversation for years. Like, how cheeky, the cheek of it, the absolute audacity of calling countries so rich in resources being the third world. The Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, is widely reported as holding between half and two-thirds of the world's coltan reserves. Coltan is in your phone. It's in your laptop. It's in every device that makes a modern digital economy function. The DRC also holds the world's largest cobalt reserves, essential to electric vehicle batteries, to the green energy transition the global north is publicly committed to. Nigeria has some of the largest oil reserves on the planet. Bolivia has lithium. Indonesia has nickel. The Amazon basin holds biodiversity that pharmaceutical companies have spent decades trying to extract, patent, and monetize. So these are not inherently poor countries. These are countries whose wealth has been systematically extracted. And this isn't ancient history. These mechanisms are still ongoing. Colonial extraction didn't end with any kind of formal independence. It just restructured. It became debt. It became IMF structural adjustment programs that required countries to privatize national assets, requiring countries to slash public spending and open markets to foreign capital, often as conditions of receiving emergency loans during crises that those same foreign financial systems had actually helped to create. They had a hand in creating those. It became trade agreements designed to keep raw material exports cheap and manufactured goods expensive, locking countries into the bottom of supply chains rather than letting them build up the industries that generate actual wealth. It became bilateral investment treaties that allow corporations to sue governments in private arbitration courts when those governments try to regulate their own natural resources in the public interest. The label third world papers over all of this. It just covers it all up, just smothers it like a nasty, dirty, stanky, dusty rug. It turns a political outcome, strategy, let's say, the result of centuries of deliberate extraction, deliberate destabilization, deliberate structural disadvantage into something that looks like, oh, it's a natural condition, it's just naturally occurring. And so poverty in these regions is simply what these places are rather than what has been done to them and is still being done to them. So let's talk about this framing and what it's doing, the kind of work that it's doing, the labor involved to keep it going. When you label a country a third world, you position the speaker and the listener outside and above it. You position its situation as a problem to be managed by external expertise, external aid, external intervention, regime change. You remove from view. I'm not taking away anything about hugely damaging, problematic regimes across the globe, but just as an example of how it's just flippantly used. If you remove from view the question of who created the conditions being managed, then you are missing the entire thing. And you make accountability, which is so necessary right now, completely disappear. If the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, is simply a third world country because the people have been made poor, right, then the tech companies that have historically sourced the resources, the minerals, through supply chains funding armed conflict, those companies whose valuations are measured in the trillions, they're peripheral to the story, right? They become at most an opportunity for corporate social responsibility initiatives. Ugh, CSG, voluntary, reputational, optional. But if the DRC is a resource rich country whose wealth has been extracted by external actors for over a century, then those companies are not peripheral, are they? They are very central. The language you use, that's why language is so powerful. The language you use determines what questions you're allowed to ask, think about, the kind of conversations you're going to have around the dinner table. Some people say, oh, the term is just outdated, but people don't mean anything by it. Oh, please, please. Push back on it and push back on it hard because intentions do not determine impact. Okay. And outdated is doing a lot of work. Oh my gosh, it's really carrying that. It's a reach. Oh, it's just outdated. The question is not whether the Cold War geopolitical architecture is still relevant. The question is that the phrase is doing so much damage, is still in use in 2026 when it is applied to countries that are predominantly in the global south, predominantly non-white, and predominantly still subject to economic structures that serve the interests of wealthier nations. So, what the phrase does is it tells a story about the world in which some places are naturally developed. And I'm not the first to say this, of course, and won't be the last. And some places are just naturally behind. Oh, they need a little bit of help, don't they? In which the global economy is a fair competition that some have simply just won, you know, they just worked harder to extract. In which the accumulated wealth of the global north has no particular relationship to the accumulated impoverishment elsewhere, the accumulate decline. And so that story is false, but people are keeping it alive. Oh, are they keeping it alive? So words are not just descriptions. These words, when they're used routinely, repetitively for generations, these words, these descriptions, they're like architecture and they will organize what you can see, what we all see, what you think, what we think is even worth asking or speaking about, and who to hold responsible and who to essentially pressure to decide on responsibility and accountability. Third world, it was built to serve a specific power arrangement. So the question, and I always say this, always ask about what's going on in the world with this sort of lens of power. The question is whether we keep maintaining this farce, whether we start asking, actually, who's benefiting from that framework, that infrastructure, those words.